Hi, everybody. Always a pleasure to be at the Compassion Consortium. As we enter the interfaith portion of the Compassion Consortium service, that we're going to be talking with someone who is Roman Catholic, who was introduced to us by our guest from last month, Ryan Laddie, who's Buddhist. And that just makes me happy. That feels like how things are supposed to work in this world. And here at the Compassion Consortium, that is how they work that way. So, Daniel Mascarenhas, SJ, what a pleasure to be meeting you for the first time face to face and voice to voice. So, you are a Jesuit seminarian. You actually come from India, and a lot of people may not know that the part of India where you come from has a lot of Catholic folks from Portuguese heritage. You can tell us a little bit about that. So, welcome. Welcome to the CC.
It's good to be here. Thank you for hosting, and it's wonderful to see there's a great gathering of people who care about animals.
We care a lot, and that's how we find people like you who also care a lot. So, give us the nutshell version in your life of the juxtaposition of your religious convictions and your animal rights convictions.
Yeah, and this is ideal for an interfaith gathering because the person who first questioned me about animals and our care for animals was is not a Catholic, and I was in St. Louis studying philosophy, and a student came up to me one time and asked me. He I think he's a non-practicing Hindu, but he said, "What do Christians think about care for animals, given that we follow Jesus, who is the Prince of Peace and who preached nonviolence?" And I did not have a good answer for him, and I said, we are allowed to eat meat as Catholics, but he said the point was not about being allowed, but about what does Jesus say about killing animals, and I took that to heart and I looked at what that would mean to be a follower of Christ, but and also if I'm involved in some violent activity towards animals. So even today, that is a foundation of my belief that I'm a follower of Jesus who preached kindness and compassion and love, and animals are able to receive love and compassion. The flip side, they are also able to experience suffering and pain. And so, as a follower of Jesus, I am invited to show love and compassion to as many creatures as I can.
That's beautiful. Now, you are kind of not only a different drummer diner as a vegan, but you're following a calling that we read the numbers are dwindling of people going into religious life in the Catholic Church. What drew you to this path?
Yeah, it's a long story. God has many different ways of working. I did enter seminary later in life, so I was 29. I was working in tech in San Francisco when I decided to leave that and join seminary. At first, I think I got the idea out of the blue one fine morning when I was praying. I got this thought in my head that I asked myself, what would I be happiest doing? And for some reason, the answer came a priest, and I thought to myself, well, that's not happened before. I was working as an engineer, and I like living in Northern California. But I think at some level, I may have been asking myself that there must be something more, something that would be more fulfilling. I think I had found more joy and energy in 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 talking about faith, about accompanying people through suffering. I was doing some work at a shelter for women in downtown San Jose, and I enjoyed spiritual conversations, conversations about religion and faith. And so I think that gave me more energy than working in tech, and I perhaps saw it as a way that might give me more fulfillment, and that's how I think God invited me into this life. Now I see it as a way of serving people, helping them on their journey, and helping them find God and make God a bigger part of their lives. And that's how I'm here. Yeah, I think a lot of people are seeking for meaning. They're seeking for something bigger, and I hope I can be of assistance to people through the Catholic tradition.
So earlier, before the service, Phil had asked what the SJ was after your name, and you said Society of Jesus, and that is the Jesuits. And I think sometimes non-Catholics and maybe even Catholics too kind of have the Jesuits sort of mixed in with the Da Vinci Code and Harry Potter, and everybody has this idea that the Jesuits know things that other people don't know, and that they're just kind of a little bit cooler than a lot of ordinary humans. So tell us about the coolness or if we've been misled.
Well, thank you for the positive spin on that. I mean, I think if you Google, you'll find a lot of conspiracy theories. I can assure you that we are not running the world. If you see my brother Jesuits load a dishwasher, you will realize how incompetent we are. Um, I think a lot of it comes down to over the centuries now that Jesuits were involved in on the boundaries of faith and culture. Earlier in the 15 and 1600s or 1700s, a lot of Jesuits went to different parts of the world and were trying to explain the faith to new cultures, and that's always a complicated situation. And then later on, we got involved in education and with youth, and so that's another place where Jesuits have a lot of influence. And so I think sometimes people think that well, with such influence, we might be trying to do something nefarious, and so the conspiracy theories come out. But I think for the most part, maybe Jesuits are more known for education. We spend more time in school, and also a lot of Jesuits are involved in teaching or in university administration, especially in the US and other parts of the world as well. So I don't know if we are cooler, but I think definitely the education aspect of it is something that's fraught with difficulty because we are always trying to examine new ideas and try to apply church teaching to a rapidly changing culture.
And the founder, Saint Ignatius, is that correct?
Yes.
Give us just a nutshell of his philosophy of life.
Yeah, fascinating guy. So he was in the military, and then he had a severe leg injury while fighting for the Spanish, well, sort of Spanish against the French in northern Spain, in Pamplona. And so when he was recuperating and he was bedridden for a while, he had a conversion where he realized that he would be more inspired and more fulfilled in serving God and following the saints rather than serving his king and following other soldiers for fame and glory. So he found that God was inviting him to serve a higher purpose than just to try and attain some fame and glory. I think the main thing that Ignatius added to the Catholic tradition, I would say, is that it's a more positive view of the world that God is present in the world. We can sense God's movements through our own experiences and through people, through the world around us, that God is still present. And so we use this term called finding God in all things, in the sense that God is active, God is alive, and God is guiding all things towards God in the end. That would be the main thing. And the other thing that I really apply a lot is, uh, and this is helpful for me as a Catholic, but especially as a seminarian, is that he says that the aim of life is to serve God. So that's like the highest good. So everything else we do in our life, in our day to day, is we need to ask that question: How are we serving God? Of course, we are serving God not just by sitting and meditating, but also by serving God's people. Right? We love God by loving the people that God loves. We love God by loving the creatures that God loves. And so, but the goal is to love and serve God. That's the goal every day.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, my favorite Jesuit, and until of course I met you, was Sebastian Rail. Is that a familiar name to you?
Does not ring a bell. Sorry.
Well, the only reason I know about him is there is an amazing woman in Maine who studies colonial vegetarianism and veganism, even though they didn't have the word for that then. And she's discovered people who lived in New England long, long ago and who were practicing this way of life. So Sebastian Rail was a Jesuit from France who had gone to Maine. He was living in the early late 1600s, early 1700s. And when he met the native people, he was so impressed with them that instead of trying only to bring them around to his way of seeing things, he was opening up to their way as well. He was a complete vegan in in New England in 1700, living out with the native people, and he actually perished in a skirmish with settlers when he was fighting on the side of the native people. So, you know,
Great story. And
veganism.
Nika, you can see how such stories sometimes can lead to controversy as well. So
Absolutely, yes. So, how is your veganism received by your fellow seminarians, teachers, authority figures?
it's a wide range. So generally, I think it's as long as I'm not saying something heretical, it's fine. And it's mostly neutral, like, oh, this is what Daniel kind of thinks about, and uh, so it's yeah, just kind of let Daniel do what he needs to do. My superiors generally have been like supportive. I write for a Jesuit website called a Jesuit Post, and that those articles get published. In the house, since we cook for each other, I have made it clear that I'm vegan. So uh, if the guys want, when other guys are cooking, and if they want to take the trouble to cook something separate from me, great. If not, I'll just eat the sides. When I cook, I only cook vegan food. And yeah, so generally it's a peaceable situation without too much dialogue or conversation. Some of my closer friends are interested, and they kind of know my stance. Uh, in the US, there are about maybe 1,100 Jesuits, and I have a small email list, which we are eight of us who are vegans or vegetarians out of those 1,100. So that of that whom I know. So I'm always keeping an eye out in case somebody else identifies as vegan or vegetarian, and then I can add them to our mailing list, and we just kind of share thoughts once in a while over email. So generally, I'm grateful that I'm allowed to speak up and question church teaching and encourage people to a different lifestyle. But I wish there was a little more support, and I wish I could have uh, converted some of the people I live with, so I would feel more supported in a real way.
Well, I think most of us have wished that from time to time. Now, I'm going to tell you my fantasy to change the world for animals and everybody, that one day a big religious group will not force their members to go vegan or vegetarian, but they will suggest it strongly enough that a huge shift starts to happen. And as I think about that particular daydream, it's usually the Catholic Church. So, how bizarre of a fantasy is that? Could you see that happening? Maybe not in our lifetimes, but in somebody's lifetime.
Well, in somebody's lifetime for sure, because it's in the book of Isaiah, right? That in the end all creatures will live in peace with each other. So that's going to happen, sure. Uh, yeah, I mean, I hope that the Catholic Church will make more proclamations. I mean, Pope Francis mentioned a couple of things here and there. Uh, yes, I think I guess for a Catholic Church, I think it's a little hard to make proclamations because maybe in some places in the world you might still have to eat animal products based on the food supply. And so having to nuance that might get kind of complicated, like saying, oh, everybody should be vegan except XYZ because they live in the tundra or in the rainforest, right? But you never know. I mean, the fight for an end to slavery is a great example that that's something that was so ingrained in the economy of Western Europe was eventually outlawed, right? And so I think it is possible. It takes time. It takes hundreds of years, but we live in the hope. We trust that God is still in charge, and God is inviting us to continue fighting on the side of good and we do our best. And I trust that God will take care of all things in God's time. I
Wow.
continue to work with I've talked to a couple of bishops. I've written to the Pope occasionally. I've not heard back, but I've spoken with some bishops in person, and it's been some good conversations.
Wonderful. So, what do you think are some of the better strategies for Catholics and other people of faith to use in sharing their animal rights sensibilities with fellow believers?
Yeah, I think for me as a Catholic, and when I speak with fellow Catholics, I often make sure I start with the discipleship of Christ. You know, as Christians, as Catholics, that is our goal. That's what we profess, that we are disciples of Jesus Christ. So that is a very big common ground. So find a common ground, make some comparison and ask a question. So I find a common ground of saying, okay, we are called to be disciples of Christ, and Christ preaches kindness and nonviolence and care and compassion. And then I draw the analogy and say, well, we show kindness to people, we show kindness to some animals. Uh, what will it take for us to show kindness to other animals? So I think just to kind of, for me, it's helpful to keep the basis that we are already kind and good people, and so we just need to extend our kindness and goodness towards creatures who seem to be outside of our circle of compassion right now.
Yeah.
So keep the conversation going.
Yes, yes. So historically, we know that in the very early church, within the first 200 years after Jesus was on earth, there were lots of vegetarians. There were enough vegetarians that it irritated St. Paul, and that's even in the New Testament as well as some of the historical writings. What do you make of that? Why do you think there were so many vegetarians at that time when, as we read the Gospels, we don't really see that Jesus talked about it?
Yeah, I'm not entirely familiar with the way it was portrayed at that time. My understanding of the early church vegetarianism is mostly about asceticism, a way of denying oneself
Mhm.
for the sake of honoring God, or stripping away our desires for pleasure, right? So I think eating meat is it still is, but it was definitely a big luxury back in the day. And so being able to deny oneself of that appetite for meat was a way of honoring God. So I don't know if there was much in terms of animal, like care for animals in that regard uh, when people were vegetarian, but I think it was more in terms of self-denial for the sake of honoring God. Saint Paul's I mean, the one place he talks about it is in the letter to the Corinthians about meat offered to idols. The non-Christians would offer meat to idols as part of their festivities, and then the meat was shared. And Saint Paul was very concerned about eating such meat that came from idol worship. That's my best understanding of the early Christian practices.
Okay. It's all fascinating. Now, as our time winds down, you have a wonderful website. It's kind of, I would say it's a very brave website of vegancatholic.org. Is that correct?
That is the website. Yes.
And tell us, well, what you do there and why we should all go.
Well, I think it shows up in the top Google search because I got the best domain name for a Catholic vegan, so vegancatholic.org. Uh, it's just my musings on the topic. So a lot of it is articles I have written from different perspectives of why Catholics should consider veganism. Obviously, care for animals is foundational, but also environmental concerns, health, worker rights, and so on. I also have some videos there that summarize some of my articles in 2 or 3 minutes. So I think my hope is that it'll be a good resource for anybody curious about the topic, or if you yourself want to be informed about veganism from a Catholic standpoint and you would like to make good arguments or good conversations with people, then I hope I've covered many different angles through my articles and videos. And I put some other resources out there as well, like some prayers and some pictures that I found helpful, other websites that might talk about veganism. So a wide range of things. I don't have much in terms of recipes. I just have a link to a couple of recipe websites that I found helpful, and I would invite you to just go to their website and give them the traffic so I don't copy their recipes. So I think, yeah, please check it out. If even if you're not Catholic, maybe you might find something helpful there in terms of how other people think and why veganism can be applied through a Catholic lens.
Well, you're so charming. I would like to learn about how life looks through your lens. And that's how, really, that's how I hope we can all kind of be vegan and animal rights evangelists, just by being interesting people that other people want to know more about. So thank you so much.